Should you hire somebody to help you manage your Airbnbs, right? AKA a co-host. Or should you hire a management company? In fact, a better question, at what point in your Airbnb business journey does it make sense to bring in some extra help? The reality is that's going to ultimately depend on how busy you are. Like if you don't have a 9 to 5 and you don't have kids, then you're gonna be able to manage a lot of Airbnbs. Like I have one of my students, Victor, he is a husband, a father of a few children. I think he has 2 kids. And he's got 9 Airbnbs that he is co-hosting for other people who own or sublease those properties. And he has not brought in a co-host or a virtual assistant to help him as the co-host, because the reality is he has a lot of time. He got let go of his 9 to 5, which gave him the time and space to focus on this business. He went from 0 to 9 Airbnbs within a year and a half. But now he's got those 60 hours back per week that he can now invest into his business. And he spends less than 15 hours a week, again, less than 15 hours a week, managing 9 Airbnbs, and he's doing, all the work himself. Obviously, he has a cleaner and a maintenance crew, but he's able to successfully manage 9 short-term rentals all by himself, and that works perfectly fine. Last year, I was on my way to Arizona to go on the Ken McElroy's podcast, and as I was on the, walking through the airport, going to the Uber, this guy approaches me and he's like, "Hey, you're the Airbnb guy, right?" And I'm like, "I guess so." And he says, "Hey bro," he's like, "I got a question for you." I'm like, "Shoot." He says, "I own a dental practice with 10 employees. He said, "I'm very busy running this business, but my next thing is getting into Airbnbs." He's like, "I want to start creating additional streams of income. My question to you, Jorge, is, should I manage the Airbnb myself or should I get somebody right off the bat?" After asking him a few questions about his 10 employees and his business, it sounds like he actually makes a lot of money. Like he makes millions and millions of dollars from his dental practice, right? And he's got a big team to oversee and manage. So I told him that it would make more sense to find a co-host or manager right off the bat. Why? Because his time is so valuable in his dentist practice that it makes sense for him to keep investing his time there where he's getting a great return on his time and just delegate the Airbnb that he's going to launch to somebody else. So that's a great example of someone who's going to have their first one and they're not going to manage it versus someone like my student Victor who has 9 and he's doing everything himself. So again, it's going to depend on your situation. Typically what I tell my students, right, especially when they have a 9 to 5, because most of my students do, I tell them, hey, when you get to 3, 4, or 5, 3 to 5 Airbnbs, that's a great time for you to bring in some additional help, because the reality is it's a lot of work, right? This is not a passive business unless you bring in a manager that manages the Airbnbs. But if you're the manager, like for my student Victor, this is not a passive business. It's an active business. The beautiful thing is he only works 15 hours a week and he makes over 6 figures a year. Now let's say it's the right time to get a co-host. Where do you even begin? Where do you find a co-host? So I want to give you guys a few recommendations. One, you can go on Facebook and search Facebook groups. So let me give you guys a few terms that you guys can search, because there's going to be a lot of short-term rental groups on Facebook with all kinds of different titles. So for example, you might want to type Airbnb host and then your city. Now you want to try as a second option is vacation rental host and then the city. The next one is short-term rentals hosts and then the city. So again, STRs, vacation rentals, Airbnb hosts. Play around with that first piece at the beginning because there's a lot of different names out there. And now here's the thing. I remember one of my students said, "Jorge, I live in a very small city." I forgot, I think she's somewhere in Florida, in a small city that no one's ever heard of. And she says, "There's no Facebook group here." She said, "So I'm going to just start my own." And I'm like, that's a great idea. You're going to position yourself as an expert, as the authority, and guess what? People are going to want to work with you, and maybe they might even bring you your first co-host deal. So if you don't find a Facebook group out there, why not just start one in your city? And I would call it Airbnb host, whatever the city it is. If you guys are enjoying this content, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. And of course, don't forget to like this video. Now, one more thing that I want to share is, personally, I have a portfolio of 18 Airbnbs, and I have a manager, aka co-host, that basically does all the day-to-day operations, allowing me to be a little bit more hands-off. In addition to the manager, I also have a virtual assistant. What's the difference between the manager and the virtual assistant? The virtual assistant is strictly in charge of all communications. They respond to all the guest inquiries, any reservation modifications, if we're submitting a claim, charging any additional fees for heating up the pool or whatever it is. And then the manager handles more of the hands-on stuff. He visits the properties in person. He's in charge of calculating how much we pay each cleaner every month by multiplying how much we pay each cleaner times the amount of check-ins and whatnot. And so I wanted to make sure that I allowed and protected the time of my manager to focus on those higher income activities, and then those lower income, tedious yet important activities could be done by the virtual assistant. This allows my manager to, again, focus on the more important things and all the big picture stuff. That being said, guys, if you guys have any questions, feel free to type them in the comment section. Check out one of my other videos here on this page, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.